Hello, bruv. Time for chapter 3 of Laura Mundo's The Father's Plan. Flying Saucers and the Father's Plan. Chapter 3 is a winnowing out. In March of 1957, we prepared for our first Detroit Saucer Convention, at which we would be the host. We would be joined with other local saucer groups, which had broken off from ours. Some had become completely objective, later dying in boredom. Others had become psychic, with later devastating results. We invited the 14 saucer groups that had, by that time, organized throughout the state of Michigan. A young man who came to the delegation meeting showed me, as they can, that he was a visitor. Later, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I recognized his voice, although he was trying to disguise it, when he called on the phone, anonymously identifying himself as representing the Silence Group, which had, at the time, been reported as going about silencing saucer researchers. He told me that I had better get out of the flying saucer research at once, because I had come too close to the truth. My soul mind told me at once he was a visitor, through whom the Father must discover now who can be frightened out of saucer research. Adamski, later having a bad experience with students in Switzerland while lecturing there, insisted that the Silence Group is an earthly, moneyed interest. Arthur K. Bender of Connecticut apparently contacted the astral or negative subhuman mind frequencies when he reported that the space people are black, formless creatures with red patches for mouths, and which can take any form they wish. They do not want humanity to be informed. According to Bender, wishing instead to make it their slave, the pictures of the astral, I guess it's just astral, or someone opposite of the physical, and can be roughly compared to the negative of a regular photograph. Take your choice if you do not believe. This is a well-ordered and controlled universe, and Earthman only, in this system, allowed free margin to make error, or follow the dictates of his own will only. Own will only, until he learns to allow the patterns for being that social and religious systems under which he lives. I gotta restart. Until he learns to allow the patterns for being that social and religious. Until he learns, I'm skipping a sentence. Until he learns to allow the patterns for being that is the center of his atoms to roll out into his daily living. More word salad. The social and religious systems under which he lives, keeping it from doing so and until it has to force its way and chaos develops. Although at times his too assertive human will mind or too pious soul over mind might coincide with what his father mind has in mind as well. And it's getting later. What do you expect from me? What do you want? What do you want? I knew that the young man who called me meant, however, about my coming too close. This is awfully written. I knew what the young man who called me meant, however, about my coming too close to the truth about the saucers. When Mr. Adamski came to Detroit for the first time, he had warned about bringing psychicism into the saucer field. Not only would the public turn away, psychism having proved to be undependable in the past, but our mission would suffer. If these were the latter days, those of us with understanding had the responsibility of helping humanity to an understanding of the reality of the visitors as being simply more advanced human beings coming to help us to help ourselves before it is too late. But those steeped in psychic research, unable to conceive of the visitors as being anything but spirit being, limit These tight margins and curved, unflattened pages are difficult, to say the least, limit their own growth. They consider themselves to be more evolved than the public. Trying to contact such visitors by mental means could be dangerous to themselves mentally and physically, and misled at the end of the time. Martyrism is a human mind idea of what is pleasing to God, or the too pious soul mind. The Father needs us all alive, so that through us we can work with humanity. This reminds me of the chapter in the Quran. Oh, Surah XXVII, which is 36, which reads, when soothsayers and astrologers through the East were bewildered at the time of Muhammad's coming by the appearance in the heavens of a comet and many meteors which baffled all their science and made them afraid to sit at nights on high peaks to watch the stars as was their general custom, they told inquirers that their families or spirit guides, author, could no longer guide them, bring themselves completely at a loss and terrified. This is because such guidance is coming from their own subconscious minds, tapping the negative frequencies of being of the first, second, and third dimensions, which cannot intuit the unprecedented or that which has not happened before, as can the soul mind, or fourth, fifth, sixth frequencies of being, as if informed by the seventh or zero frequency. The Father, but only makes concrete sense if the human mind is balanced with the soul mind. Right. About a month before the saucer field opened up to me, I was weeping one day while going about the house doing my housework. I was concerned with difficulties in my own personal life that seemed to make no sense, and about having to take steps within it I did not want to take. Suddenly I heard my own voice, only more beautiful than my real voice, my soul self, speak crossly to me, telling me to be patient. Then beautiful music and a chorus of indescribable male and female voices singing Jesus, lover of my soul, welled in behind and up over my head. Then silent understanding came, as though climbing a spiraling frequency up over my head. My conscious mind had been able to contact the even higher balanced Father frequency of my own mind, not some great master or spirit being or visitors. Many saucer researchers having such an experience would probably in error believe they were contacting either or both. This can happen after an individual has meditated too much, precipitating too many positive energies, refining the physical body to where it no longer is proper insulation, is no longer properly insulated, I assume she means, and where the soul mind cannot stand the atmospheric pressures. The Roman Church, knowing of this mental development, has adopted it by symbology and marrying their nuns to the church. However, since all are individuals, or an individual aggregate of threefold atomic thinking energy, word salad, suspended in the same atmosphere, subject to the same past lives of lesser understanding that must be worked out in this lifetime, limited by parental, social, educational, religious understanding, one can see that contact with the Father is not necessarily limited to within religious walls, although Michael, the head man of the solar system, what? Who the hell is Michael? Although Michael, the head man of the solar system, or Christ. Wait, who's Michael? Christ? Working with Jesus and others will come to personally conduct those graduating into the spaceship, a spiritual marriage, although he also mates with the most advanced earth woman each time, in order for Lucifer, Adam, I love this lady. In order for Lucifer, Adam, Jesus to be reborn at a higher level. A month after I got into saucer research, February 1954, while promoting Adamski's lecture, the visitors came over my home in their saucers and sent a beam of neutronic energy of the father frequency to my reactivating brain cells that had been put to sleep, so to speak. When I also this is literally a neutronic energy beam blasting into my brain, so to speak, when I also had been demoted from a more advanced planet. This returned greater universal understanding to me, as I had become one with the universe after this occurrence. I discovered what they had been doing in the past when coming upon Edward Buck's book, Cosmic Consciousness, although apparently not to the degree the recipient realized it, had been done by scientific instrumentation. At the time, I considered it a psychic experience, being greatly in error, as was Edgar Casey, with whose teachings I am sure you are well acquainted. Yeah, he's not as funny as you. Funny, like a clown, but not funny as you. Earnestly funny. A couple of years ago, after getting into saucer research, I began writing a book titled The Visitor's Plan, which I later sent out to those on our mailing list in rough draft form, there being nobody available, with an understanding of my understanding in order not to change it, to make a final draft of it, and to edit it. I believe that the people who received the material would find its content more important than its form. During that time, I was saved from an accident by my soul self and my father self, which would have crippled me, and I explained this in the book. I did not take offense when Adamski came and warned against psychics, as many people did who had such experiences. They felt he was denying such experiences, even though he had taught of them for 30 years. This fact made it even more difficult for him to make such a warning. Nor did I consider that having don't you snap on me. Nor did I consider that having had such an experience had made me mentally unstable. Knowing or understanding that such a soul contact can be of desirable frequency at first or an emergency, but then, if continued or encouraged, can lower itself in frequency until it is no longer desirable. What I had experienced was not the same as when we lower our own frequencies, while, for example, dropping off to sleep or through weariness, ill health, fear, etc., can often get in on the frequency where sound vibration is recorded. The negative or first, second, third frequencies of being below the frequency of sound as is radio, including Morse code on the infrared spectrum, which can be picked up at such times. I took a public stand not to include literature and lectures which advocated the use of psychic methods by which to contact the visitors, trance, visions, or even the infrared light beam said to be received from spaceships. When an individual's speaking apparatus is activated by such stimuli, there can be some facts or truths come out, but the individual's brain cells, in which is recorded the advanced knowledge he learned on other planets, are still not reactivated, nor are those of his listeners. Sometimes, in the course of these occurrences, the tone of the medium's voice changes, and this may be interpreted through error as representing some great master or people from other planets. For example, Paul's vision on the way to Damascus was his own soul self begging for release, but he interpreted it to be Jesus because of his guilty conscience. This misinterpretation held back a realistic vibratory science from being developed, and mankind's coming to know that it is often not the individual who is flattering him or attacking him vocally, but the spectrum of energy being. The negative polarity of being has a natural function of dividing people, and thus wars continue. And so do private arguments of individuals, and divorce become rampant. Mainly because of my speaking out against psychism, I found myself on the outside of the group which I myself had helped to organize. They considered me as having only physical understanding of saucers, and therefore less evolved than the group, and that I was keeping the group from growing. When Adamski asked to return to Detroit in 1955, I asked another group of people to work with me. They were anxious to work in saucer research, but were not totally understanding that I was organizing the group from an objective perspective. Many of these people had had psychic experiences. By the third time Adamski came back to Detroit later in 1955, I heard him attempting to turn my coworker against me, or rather the father through him, of course, and stating that I was not as capable as they were. Others who had proved themselves to me to be visitors were likewise talking against me. I began to suspect some kind of plot underfoot as I watched the others innocently allowing themselves to be appealed to and flattered. The visitors tried to turn me against my coworkers and Adamski and others by running them down to me. They made me doubt myself and my understanding momentarily. I finally realized I was smack dab in the middle of a process of winnowing out on the part of the father, and learned to take this in my stride. We had the one who might do it, offending ourselves by our condemning them rather than knowing. We had wait. We had been taught that talking about others is not godlike, condemning the one who might do it, offending ourselves by our condemning them rather than knowing that the Father knows what everybody is saying about everybody. Later, also as a conservative New Englander, whom, when I found the Father using me to discuss others, it was difficult, especially when I realized it was for others to judge me as judging others, rather than only analyzing the situation in order to isolate the human and soul minds as polarities of the conscious mind and balance them to each other and the Father. Named anybody's name, I found my morals questioned. Also, as I reported on the universal marriage practiced on other planets where no vows to each other or legal forms have been necessary. On other planets, I explained, they find such a social ceremony unnecessary when two people are to be truly united, nor do they find any legal contract which binds mismated people advisable when the idea of true marriage makes both unnecessary. Thus, again, my ideas and statements were grossly misunderstood and misinterpreted. Next, I was accused of making a living off my saucer work. Later, my mental balance was questioned as well. I could tell at once when somebody who doubted me came to me. From his vibrations, I could tell this from my sensitivity to his vibrations. Wish you could tell me how to turn this damn page. What's this? Is that Laura? Must be her and Adamski. Or is that Leslie? Above, top, George Adamski, far left in Detroit for lecture. Chats with Connie Grish. See arrow. I don't see any arrow. Is that her? I don't know. During informal meeting at her home, bottom left, Michael and John Markser. Her two sons, the author's sons, 1961. Bottom right, George Adamski and the author. In front of her home, 1955. Doubted, withdrew. Some came back and withdrew again as I allowed it without question, knowing, however, the time would come when the father would have to close the circle. Some of the lecturers I discovered were visitors, presenting many aspects of the saucer situation, for each man to discover later what had appealed to him and his own state of growth before it was too late. Some bored their audiences as time went on, relating their psychic experiences until their audiences might catch on that their attention was being distracted, while the rest of the world went on without them, advanced thinkers or not. The lectures the lectures served as a means of drawing out those who would work together to get the saucer facts to the people, as well as trying to learn more for themselves. Many were unaware as well that as they talked to their neighbors, friends, relatives, business associates about the saucers, greater understanding came into their own minds as they rose to higher frequencies, precipitating greater thinking energies. And next time we will have my meeting with Orthon. Space alien.